all the different inventions and discoveries in the world, they all came from questions that sometimes were very silly, but nonetheless that were very important. Why does an apple fall from the tree? Give us gravity. What is time? The relativity theory. Can we trust banks? Ooh, blockchain is born. Sometimes it is these particular questions, the silliest questions, that actually challenge the reality, the establishment, and give us the tools to create something new. And today, I want to ask you actually the silliest of all these questions. Where are we? Some of you will probably say we are in Royal Dublin society. Some other will probably pull out their phones and they will look at different kind of map providers. Some will look at Google Maps, for example. Some other will look at Apple Maps. The most adventurous will look at OpenStreetMaps. They all seem to agree that we are at Anglesey Road 4, Royal Dublin Society. Now, here's another silly question for you. Why do they all agree? Why doesn't, for example, Google rename this place Larry Page Avenue? Or OpenStreetMap renames it Linus Torvalds Street? Well, there is a very simple answer to that, and a very strange one. All these different map providers, they are all in competition with each other. This means that if one of them starts to change things around, then it needs to impose its view of the world to all the rest of the map providers. Effectively, all these maps are in competition, and therefore they all rely to a standard, the standard that they found. Now, unfortunately, this standard has been created in 1857, seriously. It is the postal code standard, which was invented in London in 1857. All these different technologies, all these map technologies, they are all relying on something that was created more than 150 years ago, and it is as obsolete as VHS. For example, if I'm in the middle of the ocean, where am I? What is my address? Your desk at work, in the office, what address does it have? If you are in the middle of the forest, if you are in the park, if you are parked with your yacht somewhere in Sardinia, what is your address there? The postal code standard is incomplete. Fulvio is the co-founder of Web3 Ventures and one of the minds behind UNL. He's married to a Russian lady. At his own expense, he finds out that 15% of the parcels that he is sending to Russia, to Moscow, gets lost. You know why? Because he writes down the address in Latin characters, but the parcel delivery man, he reads Cyrillic. Sometimes he doesn't even understand the Latin characters. All the different addresses are too fragmented, different from each other. They are extremely localized, and sometimes they are very inconsistent with each other. But the number one problem is the fact that the postal code standard is effectively digitally unaware. All the map providers, navigators, all these things, they effectively are technologies that rely heavily on the internet connection because they need to communicate with a system that constantly harmonizes and reconciles the digital world with the physical one. Some of you probably heard of the term reverse geocoder. Well, that is one of them. Also, all these different map providers, they are effectively gatekeepers for data that in fact resolves to location data. Like, for example, POIs, point of interest. It is absolutely clear that we need a new standard. We need a new addressing system, something that, in fact, it is complete, something that can address everything, indoor and outdoor. That share needs to have an address if I want to deliver something there, if I want to do proximity. It needs to be semantic. I mean, if this is Royal Dublin, whatever, why this is not addressed at Royal Dublin service? It needs to be human-friendly. You need to be able to communicate it easily and be translatable from nation to nation. It needs to be digitally aware. It needs to be aware of the digital world. Right? If I have a certain particular establishment, the address of this establishment is probably www.thenameofthis.establishment.com in the digital world. And it's completely disjointed in terms of resources, digital resources, even physical resources, from the address that it has in the physical world. This new system needs to be not resource intensive, it needs to be lightweight so that it can run offline. And most importantly, it needs to be autonomous. Because as we saw, if there are intermediators that profit from intermediation of services, or that are gatekeepers, then it's never going to be a standard. Therefore, this particular addressing service needs to run autonomously. And that is why we created the Universal Name Locator, UNL. It works like this. We divide Earth in trillions of UNL cells. We identify each single cell with a geohash. A geohash is an algorithm, in the public domain, that compresses coordinates, longitude and latitude coordinates, into a set of characters, a string of characters. Now, if you have a string of characters, there are very interesting things that you can do. Like, for example, in our case, we divide the world in trillions of cells that are 3 meters by 3 meters. The geohash, in order to achieve that precision, needs 9 different characters. If we chop these characters in sequences of 3, then we can use these characters as a key for a dictionary. Then suddenly we can refer to any location in the world univocally, just using 3 different words. 3 different words that in fact retain their semantic, retain their meaning, even when I am translating it. So it means that this particular place, or that one in the park, for example, I can refer to, if I'm in English, as knife, boat, yield. If I'm Italian, lama, barca, resa. If I'm Russian, however it is that that stuff is pronounced. Not only that, this particular geohash can be encoded as a micro QR code that in fact can also substitute the old stamp. And here is the thing. If I'm having 3 different sequences of characters, this kind of reminds of an IP address. Now, if we are making this leap, and if we are considering these 3 different sequences as a location IP address, then the next step is a location domain name that finally reconciles the domain name, the digital domain name, and the location domain name. They become the same thing. This can get stored, will get stored permanently on the blockchain, either permanently or, for example, temporarily, so that we can, or the users of the UNL, can effectively auction a name to refer to it and to easily share it for a temporary period of time. For example, when they need to share a certain location in the park. Now, we thought about the UNL stack, and we have been inspired by the internet protocol. So, at the very basic, on the very basis of the entire protocol stack, there is geohash, the location IP, geographic IP address. On top of it, there is the location domain name that we already talked about. But then we can start to add metadata. We can start to add digital data to it, to physical locations. So we can, for example, have a linking layer, which means that I can encode natively in the protocol a navigation system. I can say, for example, that in order to get here, in this particular cell that is Emanuele presenting, I can get here through a gate that is at the entrance, which in this case is Royal Dublin Society. So these two things are linked. And Royal Dublin Society is linked to a road, probably. So this particular linking is another layer of metadata that, in fact, can disrupt completely logistics process. This logistic process or supply chain from production to delivery, in fact, can be encoded directly in all the different locations that it touches. On top of it, we can add payload. I mean, I'm pretty sure that everybody here knows about Pokemon Go, right? Isn't that a payload of a certain particular location? We can activate augmented reality. We can effectively provide digital assets. We can link digital assets to a location in order, for example, to increase the value of that particular location. I can access certain particular documents only when I'm in their proximity. And on top of that, there is the application layer, the location-based services. Like, for example, a search engine, a location search engine. You can search on this decentralized UNL Google, for example, where are your keys? And it tells you the location of it. Now, the fact that we are establishing UNL as a decentralized autonomous service, it means effectively that we are going to finance the development of UNL through an ICO. But then we will return it to the community. The users transact on this protocol stack directly with UNL native token, which we call the Geo token. And since there is no profit, we make no profit from intermediation, nobody will, it means that there is no competition. If there is no competition, and there is no competition because it is not economically viable to have competition, since nobody is making profit from intermediation. If there is no competition, it means that de facto, UNL is standard by design. We are intending to start the ICO on Q1 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. My name is Emanuele Francioni, and the UNL project is a project incubated at Web3 Ventures. Just reach out if you need more information about the ICO, about the technology, or if you want to build the next generation location-based systems. Thank you very much.